for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Well. Good evening. How you doing? Fade to Black. That's right. Today's Monday, July 13th, 2026. Let's do this, man. Yeah, I'm back. This week on Fade to Black, tonight, Tim Tactical is here for the first time. Calling the show NHI on Earth. This conversation is going to go in many directions tonight, but it's a big umbrella, and we can just fall underneath it. Tomorrow night, Melissa Tittle is back with us. She's got a new film out. It is called Illusion. Wednesday night, Jason Quitt back with us. He's got his new book out, and that's right, we're going to discuss Plato's Atlantis. And then Thursday night, Larry Eisler the third, not the second, the third will be here. He's a paranormal filmmaker, and he's got a bunch of new projects that are out. We'll be discussing all of that and how he got here with us, and that will be on Thursday night. All right. Yeah, back in the saddle. I just saw the comment there in the live chat. I think the last show that I did was on the 18th, so almost a month ago. A lot has happened in the last month. I'm just going to leave that right there. I did a brief little mention of things for the first time earlier today on the breaking news, but that subject I'm just not going to discuss. Okay. And it's been a wild ride this last 30 days. Ken Priest is here in the chat with us tonight. Ken was with me, as well as 30 other beautiful souls that went through a serious bonding experience in Peru. But I will let all of that go. If Ken wants to answer your questions, most of you know that Ken was with me. So he's in the chat. He's opened up that door. Ken is great. And Ken, I hope you're doing well. I've been texting with Ken constantly and stuff, but glad to see you here with us tonight, Ken. All right. What am I talking about? That's it. Nope. Not even Tim Tactical knows what I am talking about. All right. So I'm just going to let that go. All right. Let's just get this thing started tonight. Very excited about the show. Tim Tactical is here. We're going to be talking about non-human intelligence. We're going to talk about what he has learned about advanced technologies and, of course, hidden programs and all that stuff that revolve around ET and contact and what is going here on Earth, which always folds back into consciousness, at least for me. So we'll see where the conversation goes tonight. He is a European governance expert and former tactical advisor who spent nearly a decade working within a covert governance sector focused on understanding the missions and activities of non-human intelligence on Earth and beyond. Wow. And that includes, of course, face-to-face encounters with exotic life forms. His website is below. I want to get straight to it. I'm going to welcome to the show Tim Tactical. Tim, it's about time, man.
It is about time. Jimmy, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thank you. And everyone at home. Good night from Europe.
Yeah, exactly. Tim's at an undisclosed location. Rumor has it it's the Illuminati headquarters in somewhere in Northern Europe near the Baltic. I'm guessing. I'm guessing. See, he's grinning. He's like, Church, no, man, let's not go there.
I have to refuse that.
Yeah, exactly. See, I got my invitation letter. One day I'll post it. Let's start here. You get the first time guest disclaimer, Tim. I'm very excited to actually give you this, which is this. Tim, it's just you and I sitting on my couch having a conversation as friends. And where the conversation starts, it starts. Where it ends, but we're going to end as friends. Now, you have to accept. You got to click on the box, and then we can move on.
I'm not sure what that means. What box do you have to click on?
See, do you accept? Good.
It sounds like terms and conditions. Yeah, I mean, French sounds great. Let's go, Jimmy. Let's do it.
Oh, man. I've done that first time guest disclaimer, Tim, probably over 1,000 times. And most get it. Some like, what? It's really funny to get people's responses. Hang on. Okay, I'm good. Let's actually start here. When we discuss things like, face-to-face contact and conversations with NHI and stuff not of this earth, that's one thing. And we're going to do all of that tonight. But the question on everybody's mind when something like that is said is, when did this start? How did this start? So let's go there first. 10 years involved in this program. When and how did that start for you, Tim?
Pretty early on, actually. I think what people need to understand is that the routines used to be different. Nowadays, every country from the US with their infamous, through Trump introduced Space Force, up to the Spanish space agency, the UK, Russia, China, Germany. They all have official websites now. So a few years ago, before 2019-ish, there was no website for these things. Disclosure was not on the radio and not in the mainstream. I was recruited straight from university, but not by having been asked to participate in a UFO non-human intelligence program, but rather in a very conventional scientific research program where we were looking into the role of the Templars and certain techniques about or ideas about how society evolved in the medieval times. So something completely unrelated. Then somehow through this time, letters or documents landed on my desk, and they started quite easily, or lightly actually. One of them was talking about the evolvement of snake-scaled lizard-like beings that were involved in the Athenian times building the Parthenon, which a lot of people out there might know that we have never ever found any blueprints of how these things were built. But as it was retrospectively, these things only made sense. Back then, I was not thinking a lot about that because there's a number of documents from the Greek times that speak about any type of anthropomorphic figures and people that turned into frogs, as we know from Ovid and so on. So there's nothing that has nothing that made me excited about that. So I never went out and with a paper in my hand, I was like, oh my God, here is someone from the Greek culture telling us about lizard-like beings in Athens. If this was actually a factual document back then, I don't even know. So I can't even say if that was real or not. But that is how it began. And then over some time, I was invited into more interesting, experiments. The very first thing, actually, very first, if you really think about that, the very first time that I saw a non-human being was straight away in that project when I was, asked at lunchtime, would you like to join us? We do have a, project going on where we use a laser, and with this laser, the way they explained it was like, look, we are living all on the electromagnetic ocean of energy. Basically, everything we see is kind of like light. Light has two positions or two ways to express itself. It's either particle or a wave, and what we do with this laser is we kind of like open the space. Humans are living on the outside edge of light, and with this laser we are opening up the field of light. And something that has surprised us is that we see images inside of this ocean of light, and it appears to be beings that are appearing in this laser experiment. What surprised these scientists was that they were wearing the red cross of the Templars, that you might be very likely you're familiar with, this sun cross. So they were presenting them. They were not called extraterrestrials, but rather, hey, we have these light phenomena. We have, some type of image phenomenon that, Tim, hey, you're looking into these things. Would you join us after lunch and just have a look at
that? Okay. Well, no, I mean, Tim, what did you think you were seeing? I mean, the first time when you view this, what's going through your mind?
I was surprisingly calm, to be honest. I don't think that I was that it was showing any type of emotion seeing that, because it was. I think it was a calm situation, being brought into this experimental setup in a neighboring facility. Again, I was doing scientific work in the governance space, historical analysis, and so on. So these were departments. I mean, that are neighboring. And what I was seeing was indeed that they were shooting this laser beam, a roaring machine that was shooting a laser beam right into behind a glass wall. We were standing there, 3 people, and you could see that it was like opening some type of optical illusion. That was also the way that it was introduced to me.
Sure.
Right? An optical illusion. For me, I did not think that it was an optical illusion, but I did see these 3 beings that looked very similar. So maybe it was even like a mirroring effect. So what I was seeing was this light shield with weird effects on the outside in the middle of this experiment room, and inside of it was this figurine that was just this tall, about a foot tall, 30 centimeters for everyone who's in Europe right now. It was floating, and you had these other 2 that were floating as well. And what was interesting, they had a gray skull, not to be confused with the Greys, which is another story that we get to talk about later. But slender beings, long fingers, and white coats. They were presenting themselves with white coats. I had no doubt that those were actual beings, but I was also not at all emotional about it. So it was, it was nothing where I felt like, oh my God, I need to go out and tell people about this experience. It was more that I was very fascinated and interested in that moment to see them with this red cross. Back in those times, again, no other information. This is a part, I assume, I don't know it, but retrospectively, I think those are ways to recruit people to see how do they react.
Right. It was a test.
Yeah.
It was a test. It was a test to see. Me, I would have sat down and went, come on. What? Only because it's beyond your normal day-to-day existence, right? And you encounter something like this completely out of the ordinary, and they want to see how you're going to react.
Yeah, and I didn't. And I think that was the reason why I moved forward from just being shown documents to seeing optical illusions that very much looked like beings. There was no sound except for the noise that this laser made, and other than that, there was no communication at all. Interestingly enough, Jimmy, I did not hear about these beings for years. The later on, I heard about who they really were, and that actually was when Linda Moulton Howe, who you know very well,
Yes, yes.
she was right. She was looking into my story. I sat down with her at dinner time, and we had this wonderful conversation with each other. And she was like pulling my sleeve and was saying, "Tim, I want to know the truth." And she showed me her book, and I opened it just randomly, and there was one page where she was interviewing a contactee, and she had a near-death experience, and the beings that she drew and on paper, and Linda took them into her book. Those were the beings. Those were exactly the beings that I saw. And what I later learned about these beings is that they do exist, and they have kind of a mission on this planet. And it's very fascinating because they are creating afterlife experiences for beings, especially for humans who are spiritually not prepared to die. And as we all know, we are all the universe. We want to lower the entropy, meaning we all want to be not stressed. The universe does not want to be traumatized, especially not by death, which is kind of like a net resource for the universe. And these beings are creating these famous afterlife stories where you're going to meet your Aunt Sally and your grandma and all these things. And apparently they have a few of them where you encounter your park situation, and then you're being prepared for the next thing and so on. That's their mission, and that I learned later on.
Where were they from? You said you found out later where they were from. Where were they from?
No physical planet. So we got to understand that there are what in advanced projects we call that horizontal lines of life environments, which is basically anything that is similar to the life experience that you have on this planet, right? It's all carbon-based, gravity exists, beings, breathe air. Usually, their bodies die and they go through these experiences. These beings live in the ocean of light. So the best way that it's been explained to me, and the best way I can explain that to other people is basically when you're looking at light, everything that you see right now in this room, this is kind of the hard edge of light, basically the particle side. It all kind of like crystallizes and condensed into form. However, light is also the ocean of the electromagnetic spectrum. It's kind of like a wave pattern, right? So the best way I could explain that is someone who's living at the ocean, you're looking onto the ocean, and you're just seeing the surface. You see the ocean stretching from left to right. And if you never go into the ocean, you would think that it's just a plain surface, right? But in the very moment when you go into that ocean and you open your eyes, you will see that there's a whole new world unfolding, and that is where they live.
So it's another dimension beyond our experience of this dimension.
Yeah, you could say that. Basically, the human body is designed to perceive only the hard edge of the particle side of light. And they live with us. We are kind of like sharing the same space. However, we got to go into the ocean of light in order to actually see their world. Yeah.
Now, did you ever find out, and then we'll move on, but the technical side of this is fascinating to me. Did you ever learn how they figured out how to do this with the laser?
Actually not. I mean, the way the setup was introduced to me was again at a lunch break. We just came over seeing that. What I was seeing was this silverish box, typical laser that was just shooting that right into the air, basically, into the middle of the room. So I'm not 100% sure how the physics behind that actually work. What I do know, or what I've experienced later, years later, when I talked about this experience on another podcast, the podcast host, another big podcaster, and he was saying, Tim, that's fascinating, because the day before I came on the show, he had the doctor of a child hospice in the US who came forward and was saying that all these kids that he has, basically children who come there because they're going to die, they were all reporting and they were seen to talk to beings. And when they were asked who are they talking to, they were describing these grayish beings, or when they were asked to paint them, they were painting exactly the same beings with the white coats and so on. So basically, these kids were in contact with this type of species that helped these children basically transition from the human life into the afterlife.
It also reminds me of the work of Danny Goler. I don't know if you know Danny, but Danny, with DMT, is able to use a red laser and project it and then see code, very much like the Matrix, right? Dripping code all around us. Now a lot of work is focused on what he is doing right now, and it's very interesting. But here's the thing: if the code is all around us, where is the code coming from? Is that part of another dimension, or our reality is being coded and instructed? Is it that, or is it something else? But it's the use of a laser to access this, which is very, very interesting and very similar to what you're talking about.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, yeah, they were basically breaking off the structure of the ocean. I mean, the light ocean. If you think about the water has a certain surface tension, right? You could place a leaf onto a glass of water and it would float. But in the very moment when you kind of like break off the surface tension of the water, the leaf would go down, and you could actually see from the inside, right? You would have the viewpoint of a fish or any aquatic being. And that is kind of the same way. You are actually talking about something that later on became very, very important and very interesting, because in the 1940s, World War II, Germans, they were asking the same question, and that was leading to later project, my second big project, because they were asking that question during World War II and were saying, well, something seems to be outside of this reality. Someone seems to write this reality. If only we can contact this being, we can change fate. And that led to a project that about 80 years later was then successfully done. But I guess we come to that later.
Yeah, exactly. So you've had over 100 meetings. I'm going to use meetings in quotes, right? With these beings. Walk us through that. Was there communication? And what were the meetings, technically about?
Yeah, I mean, we're missing a little bit of the story, because in that time, basically, this was a one-time experience, and I think, again, just as you said, it was a test in order to figure out would I be walking outside and just screaming around what I've seen? And I did not do that. In fact, I never ever shared anything, not even to my family or even to my friends who did not know what I was working for, until the Pentagon changed the rules, and with the whole other beings, other groups, the rules changed about 2019-ish, encouraging people to come forward as so-called independent operators. And until then, I'd never ever talked about these things. At one point, I got a letter. And I was asked to deepen my work experience. Again, not thinking much about the opportunity, just being very happy to have that opportunity. I kind of signed up for that, and it became part of the the covert sector. Whereas we're now talking about facilities that don't necessarily have either a website nor a street address. Those are facilities and things that are deep hidden underground, and you would not even know that they exist. Not even people, that in politics or mayors or something, they wouldn't know that these facilities exist there. And that was actually when suddenly the exopolitical topic became much more relevant, because I suddenly was not working on scientific approach analysis of historic events, but much rather analyzing the intentions and the signals that we were receiving from outside of this planet. And that was where I was seeing these zoo facilities, these underground zoos with exotic animals that you would not necessarily find on this planet. And suddenly we were looking at patterns that at one point somehow became video material, where we suddenly were looking at insectoid beings or insect-like beings. Again, projects that I was called in, right? So I think retrospectively, this recruitment session went over 4 years at least, until I was at a moment where then someone came over to me and said, like, hey, Tim, you've seen so much, and we have like this very prestigious and amazing thing where we would like for you to be directly in there and have communication with these beings, because the groups in the 1950s, military groups, government groups, and so on, they signed some contracts for exchange for certain technology and so on. And about 70, 80 years later, they come to the conclusion that they would like to think more and hear more about what these contracts are actually about. And that was the moment when then suddenly I found myself inside of a metal-ish container. Nothing in there except for a desk and a chair. And then I was face to face with one of these little grayish beings that you all know from any movie. And
wow.
Nice.
What country was this face-to-face meeting taking place?
We're talking about the middle of Europe. There are multiple countries involved into that, but we're talking about the European sector.
For sure. It's not a United States thing, man. It's a global thing. It's an Earth thing. I don't know why. I'm just going to make this offhanded comment. I don't know why a lot of the planet that looks into this subject, it just considers this an American thing, right? It's weird. It's not. It's not. It has to be global. There isn't another way to look at it, right?
It is 100% global. You'd be actually surprised how many countries have knowing about these things, and you'd be also surprised how many even private groups have a knowing about these things. The situation after 80 years is fairly complex. And I gotta say, the reason why the US is probably on the forefront is because they are brave enough to lead this discussion and open up certain things. It was about 2017, 19-ish, when the US naval forces were the ones who had the guts to say, we gotta all come together. And they brought nations together and groups and other power players around the world, and they were saying, look, we got to plan this thing, we got to make disclosure happen. That's how far back the recent disclosure things dating back 2017.
Now, I want to get to this first face-to-face meeting, but I have one question. So, did you find out if the Rothschilds are reptilians? Are they shapeshifters? Aren't they shapeshifters? So what? I got to throw it out there. So you're in this metal container. You're sitting at this table. You are now sitting with an NHI, ET, whatever you want to name it. What happens next?
I mean, fairly low briefings, to be honest. Mostly thrown into this. The first meetings, which is interesting. We're not talking about, again, millions of people have had encounters with the species so-called the Greys. That's the reason why when you go to Roswell now, I've never been there, but I've seen some video clips. You have inns and diners, and they all have these little puppets.
Block
everywhere.
after block after block. I go into the Hilton Hotel there, checking in. The lobby of the Hilton Hotel, the lobby has these concrete wall panels with alien faces pushing out of it. In the lobby, right? It's all the car dealerships or the McDonald's, everything, every business. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Roswell has embraced ET for sure. Okay. So yeah, not really briefed. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting because a lot of times when I'm being interviewed, people are asking, what's the briefing, what's the debriefing, what's the psychological, comforting or environment but there was none. There was literally none. And I think the reason for that is because it is an extreme stress. It's a very stressful situation, to be very honest. A high stress situation, and it was only years later that I heard. I was talking to people from the U.S. military. I was never in the military. Navy SEALs who collapsed under the impact that a non-human intelligence can have on someone. The reason for that is, and they figured that out in the 1990s, every single organic life form, and even non-organic life forms, every single being has its own radiance around it. So you have your own radiance. A stone even has a certain type of radiance, even when it's not radioactive, it still vibrates in a certain way. So they figured that out They figured that out in the 1990s. The reason why you can sit with other people in a room and it is normal to you is because you're on a horizontal line of vibrancy, so to speak. You kind of radiate the same way with all your fellow other humans on the planet. So if you are in contact with another non-human life form, they might radiate in a very different way, and that creates an enormous stress on the body that can lead even to a lethal situation, even without any impact or violence involved, just by being in the same environment. So you have a certain steps, certain diplomatic protocols that you have to perform. Basically, one of them being, extremely calm and sitting, and you are not supposed to move, not even blink at all, because you never know with another being what triggers their hunting reflexes or what triggers them in certain ways. So you basically, for the first meetings that I had, I was just sitting in this dimmed room, which is also interesting. The reason for that is because the less light is inside of a room, the less information goes into your eyes, and then your body can't actually process so many information, so you're not freaking out. But you're basically sitting in this little container, and the gray being, classic gray, the way, think about that. We now have emojis, right, on your Apple iPhone with a little ET head, not gray-ish. I think they're green on WhatsApp, but it's the exact same thing that everyone has been describing, right? Almond-shaped, long, dark eyes, oversized gray head, small body portions, long, slender arms. That's what I saw. At the end of this container, me sitting at the desk, and then it's just about 10 minutes, and I think you can't even resist and stay in there longer than 10 minutes. No one moves. You're just standing, you're just sitting there, and nothing happens. And that happens for weeks. You're gonna do that multiple times and your body never stops freaking out. I can tell you, it's the most devastating and horrifying thing. It is comparable to the situation when you're standing on the edge of a cliff and you're looking down, and your mind might say like, oh, I want to jump, but your body is like, no way, we're going to jump, no way. And you get these chills that are running over your body, and you feel like your reality is going to burst. That's the feeling that you get, and it never stops, to be honest. So everyone who had an encounter with a gray, and to my knowledge, I only know of stories where no one was harmed. There might be incidences with other ETs and so on where things went down badly, but overall, we have a lot of stories of contactees with a variety of ETs that were very scary in the beginning. And then after years and years and years, people figured out that it was actually something that deeply inspired them and has helped them in many, many ways. So that's the way that it was, that it felt.
Absolutely incredible. Now, I want to be clear on, so this isn't a laser projected hologram. This is ET sitting in front of you?
Yes. The only reason, I mean, I often get the question from people saying, Tim, why don't they land on the White House lawn, right?
Sure.
The answer is quite easy, because of viruses, space bacteria. Every organic being has its own flora on their skin. So if you think about what happened in South America when the Spanish came over, the conquistadors, you had millions and millions of indigenous people in South America. A few years later, you have none. Why? Because they were all dying away from unknown illnesses. That common
illnesses, right? Just common stuff that the Europeans had built up a resistance to, but it was brand new to the people of Central and South America. I visited a lot. I'd lived in Central America, but I've visited a lot to both Central and South America, and the stories about this are still there today. I can't imagine the mystery, because nobody can see, right? Nobody can understand what a virus is or what bacteria is and what it's just suddenly, a civilization is wiped out. I mean, it just must have been so frightening. So yeah, taking those precautions makes sense. So that the metal environment that you are in completely controlled? And was there space between you and?
Yes, there was space, but not too much. If you think about the size of a container from a cargo ship container, that's about the size that we're talking about. However, smooth metallic walls.
Right.
The reason why a lot of these bacteria and so on would be no concern at all was that the grays as a species are not fully organic life forms. They are fiber printed bodies because they themselves went through a stage of development through their billions of years of evolution, where they basically decided that their bodies were not useful for them anymore, their organic bodies, and they decided that it would be much rather a good idea to kind of like save the consciousness of any individual being in a type of a cloud-like situation that they spread all over the universe into different dimensions, different realms, and so on, so that they can upload the consciousness into almost like a digitalized form, and then they fiber print the body. Not all grays are gray, by the way. They do have a variety of bodies that they operate on different planets and in different settings, some of which are indeed more greenish, more purplish, more bronze-like, and so on. And they project the consciousness right into that. And because that is kind of like a bioplastic fiber that they are using in order to produce these bodies, which they can operate for about 3,000 years. So these things run a lot of they go a lot of miles, right? Because of that, they necessarily, there's no bacteria on their bodies, so they are sterile, right? So that is the reason why you can be in the same room with a gray, whereas you cannot be in the same room with certain other beings. One of the reasons why we have such an overdose of gray contacts is because other species that would not be able to actually operate and contact a human without harming them, they commission grays so that they can come in here and contact, for whatever reason, certain individuals on this planet.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. Would you? Okay, let's say that we're going to stay on the subject, but let me ask you a question. Now that you've had this experience, would you upload your consciousness, your soul, into a body like that so you could traverse space? Would you give up this to have that role?
I would read the fine print first, Jimmy.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna click on any checkbox here live on this television. But it's actually an interesting fact, because the grays are coming kind of back to being interested in organic life forms, because the creator of this universe has given us this triad of three things: a body, a mind, and a soul, right?
Right.
Whereas the soul is something that in advanced projects, it's actually a quantum container. It's basically a little memory disk that already saves all your information. When you are, the very moment when you hear your first LP and your body reacts to it and you are like, wow, this is music, this is guitar, that's amazing. In that very moment, your little, not your little soul, not diminishing that, but in your soul, you have an impulse that says like, oh, Jimmy seems to like something. Let's see how that goes. And over these times, the universe is refining you as an individual and is saving all these things in this quantum container, so that in the next life, the universe is testing these things again, until to the very moment, until you know yourself fully. That's what the advanced projects and other ETs are believing in, that the universe wants to have this refinement process. So the grays are kind of like imitating that in a technological way, but the universe is already doing that. We all are uploading our data into the stream of the universe all the time.
But Tim, you didn't answer the question. So, a 3,000-year container with consciousness uploaded into it from somewhere, would you do it for a 3,000-year journey?
I would not yet commit to that, not on this live session, and I would not sign certain contracts.
Good answer. Good answer. Well, I want to get back to this first meeting and
Would you,
subsequent
Jimmy?
meetings.
And remember,
okay. I'm going to answer you honestly. At my age, yeah. Would I do it if I was 20? No, I still got life to experience, right? But at my age right now, screw it, man. Let's go. Yeah, let's light this candle. And I'll tell you why. The short answer. Going from point to point in space instantaneously and not traveling for 10,000 light years, or 10,000 years to go 10,000 light years at the speed of light. Well, 10,000 years is a long time, or whatever it may be. For us to do that, we would have to have some type of android body that had consciousness to make decisions. Right. That's not subject to breathing, to sleep, to sickness and food, water, oxygen, all those things. You remove all of that, but you have an intelligent android or some kind of body with consciousness installed into it. That checks a lot of boxes to go out there and get interstellar. And I would think that ET's doing the same thing. And it sounds like they are, with the development of the grays and the growing of the grays, as you have put it.
Some are doing that. The Greys definitely have that as a collective experience in their species, 100%. But it's interesting because they rather go away from that nowadays, which is an interesting development, because you could think like, okay, this offers a lot of interesting benefits, right? We even talking about the fact that the Greys, because the consciousness comes from a stream of information into the body, it's not limited to one body. That's the interesting thing. You can, with your consciousness, operate multiple bodies at once, which that is a whole, for a lot of humans, I would say that's probably mind-blowing image in their head, right? How can you live multiple experience visually seeing? These eyes are not only designed to the human eye sees about 7% of the electromagnetic spectrum. These eyes see a lot more, right? So they have these layers of almost film, receptor cells on the eye. So they can switch into UV light, they can switch into infrared, into varieties of different other things to perceive. So the amount of data and that any consciousness of the Greys can take in is incredible compared to what a human body can. And still they decide, and one of the reasons why they are interested in humanity nowadays is because they want to go back. They learned at that through this evolution that the creator, the creation, the universe itself has a reason why we've been given a body, an organic body, a consciousness, a mind, and the soul container. The reason for that is that all three of them are interlinked with one another, and they all have to consciously evolve with one another. So while the consciousness goes to the next layer and the next level, we have words for these things. We have definitions what these layers are. We can talk about that later. It's fascinating. But when the mind goes to the next level, your body is supposed to pull ahead too. Your body is supposed to go to the next layer as well. Your soul is supposed to go to the next level as well. So the body is something that needs the mind. The mind needs to re-educate the body. And then all these things that you just said about, hey, we need to talk about not eating food. We've got to talk about how is energy distributed, right? The universe here, all ETs that I was communicating to, they were saying, you guys, humanity, you're all living on a thought of a thought, a principle, an architecture of the universe that's long gone. You're not even here anymore. You're experiencing something that's already gone. It's not here. It's a very old architecture that is already updated, but you're still living in the past, experiencing the way to the next layer of your existence. But you got to take some decisions. You got to do certain things so you can speed up this stuff. So these beings have a certain. We all have a responsibility to evolve our bodies. And then suddenly you become aware that your body can do a lot more than, consuming food. Suddenly, you know from these experiments, there are people out there who actively, practice non-food, right? They breatharian, I think this is called, and so on. We looked into that in the advanced projects. We had someone from the Indias that who was observed for 25 years. This guy has not eaten at all. And he was observed. There were eyewitnesses who saw that. So they were looking into these things too. And the body can do fantastic things, but the mind has to evolve just as much as the soul is evolving our consciousness, unseen. The body has to evolve too, and then wonders can happen.
I have a neighbor that's a breatharian, told me they hadn't eaten in 20 years. I saw a pizza being delivered last week. So, I'm just saying, dude from India, he's got Hostess Twinkies hidden in his closet. But that's a very interesting concept, though, because when we look at typically what grays are, it doesn't look like their mouth is used for eating. It barely looks like everything except for the eyes are smaller than ours, right? The nostril, the ears, and so forth. So I've often wondered, do they have teeth? Do they chew? And also, do they speak? So with the communication that you were having, how did that go down? What do grays speak like we speak?
Not necessarily. So the communication was not existing in the first few months, at least I would say 2 or 3 months, over and over in this quite small metallic container, just sitting there, taking care, breathing through the frightening experience. This is like you can imagine that like waves that roll through your body, and they make you feel warm and cold and metallic throughout, and your body is in the whole time in a state of like, dude, I'm gonna run. I'm either gonna pass
you're
out.
trying to maintain. You're doing everything you can to maintain. I can't imagine.
Exactly. Wow. So no communication, because that in the beginning you want to keep all the information, all the input as low as possible, low lights, no movements, no speaking, nothing. You're just sitting there trying to acclimatize to the fact that your reality is kind of like breaking open in front of your eyes. After some time, after these 3 months, once you feel like, okay, I can sit through this, it never stops being frightening, right? But you somehow get used to it somehow mentally. And then someday this iPad, not an iPad, but like a glass tablet, was sitting on the desk when I came into that, and it had 2 little displays. One display would show gray letters, right? They have their own alphabet, different to the alphabet that human language has. Human language is very, very decomplex compared to the gray language. The gray language has a lot of different layers to it in such an insane complexity that no human language could ever live up to that complexity. But it translates into human language on the other display half. So you can basically read, and the gray without speaking is bringing the words into that tablet. So you can ask a question. I would ask a question in vocalized form, and I would get the protocol onto the tablet, and I could read what it is. And it was perfectly translated. I would even assume that the Gray is translating that. Every now and then, which is kind of those moments I always cherish. Those make me giggle. Every now and then, a little word or something would be not 100% native, and that's it. But that is the communication. But to your question, yes, Grays can speak. They can vocalize. They don't often use that. They don't usually do that. They usually use telepathy or technology, but they do have not vocal cords, but they have kind of a sound system that can create sounds. And they also, every now and then, even a Gray body needs a little cube, and this little cube they put into their mouth, that is kind of like it takes care of the body to like maintaining the body, and that happens every hundreds of years or so. Other than that, they are completely, they get the energy out of a field that they're basically laying over the location, so that the body has an inductive energy system.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. What was the first? What was okay? So the tablets that what is? Hello, Tim. You know, is this? Yeah. Oh, so what? You know, how, were you guys on a first name basis? Was it the same ET every time? No, I'm being very serious. You're developing this relationship over 3 months, right? So the same being, you're there, and eventually, did the ET have a name? Did you give the ET your name?
Yeah, I mean, they knew my name before I came in.
Sure.
They did not. I did not call them by any name. There is an extremely subtle personality only inside of Grace, at least at that time, right? Grace, we gotta realize that is compared to humans who take thousands of years to adjust to certain things, they develop very, very quickly. So very subtle personality back then. Sometimes I had a feeling of like, oh, I'm getting a glimpse of a certain personality or something, but extremely subtle, yeah.
What do you? We're going to take a break here in about 60 seconds. With what you have learned and established versus the way the media in Washington right now is treating the subject, where it is now out in front. It's taken many, many years to get to this point. Are you surprised about the way that Washington and the media is handling this subject, or did you see all of this coming?
No, I mean, I have a very clear picture about the disclosure, and also the people who came forward and so on. These are things that you know, there's more to that, because we're not talking about you know, like, it's not a surprise that we're now having these moments. It actually came in this ET conversation. It was actually about a cycle coming to the end, and that is basically what we're preparing, what humanity is being prepared for.
Let's take our break right here. Tim Tactical is with us from an undisclosed location east of my location. Tim, you stay right there. We'll be right back after this short break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's fade to black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Tim Tactical is with us. The discussion is centered around NHI, ET here on Earth, what is going on, and what he has learned. Let's pick it up from where we left off before the break. Tim, I wanted to ask you, are you sharing information with other peoples in the project? And meetings and discussing what you guys have learned?
You mean currently or back then?
back when you were involved in the project. I mean, was it compartmentalized, or are you guys sharing information?
So the situation in Europe is a little bit different than in North America, where you have a very strong compartmentalization. In Europe, it is more of a centralized nature. So information would sometimes be distributed, and there was communication with other groups. And overall, what you gotta realize, and that is something that we all have to work on, and especially these groups have to work on, is kind of like the trust situation, right? So how much can humanity collaborate with one another? And that is definitely one thing that not only humans have on their script, on their table, but also certain exopolitical situations. They would like humanity to collaborate and to work together a lot more than it has happened in the past, thinking of all the division and all the craziness that has happened over thousands of years on planet Earth.
Yeah, for sure. Back to that first message on the tablet that was in front of you, or the first communication, I should say. Well, it may have been a message. That is establishing everything that will happen in future conversations. What was the first communication? What was it?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm very sure that a few years earlier, when I came forward for the very first time, I remember Sid Goldberg, who you know very well from Gaia. He asked me the very same question, and I know that I had an answer back then, but it was not spectacular. Again, it's a gradual process. So you basically build up to a certain point, and the way that it works is that you get a briefing before any session, where someone would come to you, would say, like, Tim, these are the things that we're interested in. Get answers to that and write your report afterwards. These things gradual. It's not the cinematic questionnaire that one might think of, right? We're not starting with the most interesting question, but we are building a relationship first and asking certain questions. So, and I was fairly free to ask questions. And I'm very curious. So my mind went everywhere with these conversations that I had with non-human intelligences. I think the most important topic for the Gray, one of the reasons why they wanted to have the conversation with me was because they were, I don't want to say warning, but they were notifying us that the Earth has a cyclical nature to it. There's a cycle to everything in the universe, in the solar-based version of the universe at least, which is why you have day and night, which is why you have winter and summer and so on. And in the same time, in the same way, there is a 21,500 year clock that kind of like has a countdown to it, that they wanted us all to know about, and that was probably their motivation to even have the conversation with me.
And why is that? What about this cycle, 21,500 years, for them to talk to us about it? What was so important?
Yeah, so basically what a lot of people might not realize, we do know since Copernicus and certainly before that as well, that the Earth is circling around the sun, right? So for a lot of people, these day and night cycles are very obvious, but they do not know that the sun itself is also cycling through a much larger, much larger track as well. The sun is moving through the galaxy in an insane speed, and basically pulls the whole solar system with it. And through that, we are changing locations. We're not fixed in the universe, just circling around the sun. We are moving into a different location, and in this different location, there are more information basically that are entering the space, and that means that we are coming to basically a moment where all our consciousness is being updated. It's almost a cycle that happens to the planet. And if you think back what happened the last time, 21,000 years, 20,000 years ago, you had a big ice age and a biblical flood, and all these, probably the Maya telling people, hey, we're living in the fourth or the fifth world, and the world goes through these cycles, and so on and so on. So ultimately, these aren't catastrophes, even though they can be extreme for the mind, the consciousness, the civilization, and so on. But these things are basically the ends of reality as we perceive it, and then a different reality continues. And as you can see right now, with us having this conversation, being so close of having ETs all in public running around, that is a moment where consciousness changes for the whole global population. We're all going to think more about who are we, what's our place in the universe, what is consciousness even about, what are we, what is happening. And there's a need for preparation, and humanity has not done any job to prepare itself for the past 21,499 years.
Right.
So we're in the middle of it, right? And that was something, not only the Grace, but every single message we got from other species was like, please, come on, prepare one another for this, because we all, from a quantum universe position, we are all creating our reality at the very moment, right? Every one of us is on their own timeline. Everyone has a responsibility to create their own reality. So realizing what that means, and what it means when a planet, we call that a level 3 planet, which is the old planet that we basically are growing out of, we're going into what we're calling a level 4 planet. And that involves ETs, that involves crazy technology. It involves other questions about infinity, and it certainly involves the individual to take on responsibility as the center point of their personal universe. Don't look left, don't look right. Realize that everyone has a responsibility for their own development and their own evolution. But we're all representations of the universe. So we want to take care that we're not going into drama, but rather go into balanced equilibrium.
We're de-evolving, aren't we? Right? Where so much of this planet thinks that this maturity that we are going through right now is the pinnacle is Amazon Prime and TikTok, right? That we've achieved this thing and we're here, and it's causing us to de-evolve. I don't understand how we let it happen so quickly and so easily. Instead of moving forward, we have chosen to just like stop and maybe take a step backwards in the evolution of our consciousness and why we are here. It's fascinating to see humans react the way they are right now.
It is fascinating. And guess what, Jimmy? Advanced projects have asked exactly the same question. Why is that happening? And the answer that they figured out was showing hints of something that completely surprised them. What they figured out was that it seems not like a natural process. It seems like someone out there has intentionally did some things intentionally in order to lower down the evolutionary capacities of humanity. The reason for that, as we learned in the advanced projects, is that humans have a very high evolutionary potential in the universe. The reason for that is because humans can be social. They have a capacity of language. They have a capacity of working with tools which connects them to technology other than other beings. They have a wonderful social life, right? They take care of their offspring. They can organize together, which creates, in theory, in a unified world, would create a much stronger force than individual life forms that only go by themselves, right? And then humans have a natural instinct, a natural connection to the mystery of the universe. They have a spirituality. They can become 100% fully conscious and psionic beings, which on staclass.com, I'm training people in psionics. But people can reach these things 100%. Some species out there are not fully capable of using psionics. They have other evolutionary methods. But a human is quite full in that range. They also have something that is very rare, very, very rare in the universe, that is actually just one life form. We got to think about that. And I hope we let that sink for 1 second for everyone out there. The universe is only one. There's only one life in this universe, and we're all expressions of that. So in a unified universe, something is extremely rare, and that is a competitive nature, or even a nature of fighting, right? So humans can do that, and with that, they are one of the very few species on the in the universe that would actually do that. For a lot of species, it makes no sense, because they would not have conflict with one another, because they know. They see themselves in the other, so it makes no sense for them. They are not living in these realities. Thus, they are also not attracting these realities. They're living very peaceful lives. Humans have this tendency that they can go into competitive mode and compete with other beings. And that brings them into a realm of beings, very few beings, where other forms of universal life would like to see humanity take on a role as universal protectors. But as you can think, there might be some beings out there, or there used to be some beings out there who did not like that idea, right? If they could prevent that from happening, they don't get a competitor. So the further we went back into analyzing all this history, remember I was in the research for historic events, the further we went back, the more we figured out certain things in the books don't make sense. Certain things just don't fit together. There are, as we know, certain geometries, buildings, certain things these other lost civilizations have left us on this planet that indicate that the human history was very, very different, that communication with ETs was a given thing, that something came in and lowered down the evolutionary potential by making certain groups on the planet very aggressive. So you suddenly have imperialism. We learned that aggression can be genetically manipulated. You can, as you know, right? If you think about dogs, if you want to breed a dog that is... The reason why we can play with dogs right now is because people before us took very nice dogs that are very social, and they bred them to the point that now we have humans' best friend, and they're coming for a pet. But if you like to, you can also create through breeding certain breeds that are more aggressive. And you see that in the history of humanity, that there were very much certain groups attacking other beings, right? And bringing down certain things. Humanity has this issue. The more we looked into that humanity made a little bit of progress, and then somehow something came in, and suddenly humanity devolved, just as you said, for hundreds of years, lost centuries, lost millennia. And overall, these things were kind of like, again, cyclical. They were happening over and over. So these questions were asked, and we came to the conclusion that there was someone from the outside playing a trick and trying to lower down the capacities of humanity.
So ET has the World Cup. Right. You have to learn. You have to learn how to move forward and to evolve through experience. So yeah, anger, war, killing, ET had to have matured through all of that, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be very honest, we're talking about a situation right now in this universe where more than 95% of all living life forms out there are very social. They are all very nice and evolving quite nicely. There are few points in the universe that seem to be contaminated, right? We were talking about contamination in the projects. Surface Earth, one of them. If you think about what happened, you had always on planet Earth certain very far developed, wonderful civilizatory elements. Talking about ancient Greece, right? I have Athena standing here on my desk as a reminder for that. Beings that came together and said, like, hey, we want to have demokratia, we want to have philosophia, we want to dedicate our lives to the purity of the evolution of mankind. And then somehow these beings come to a point where civilizatory aspects collapse over and over. You see the same thing in the Roman Empire. You see the same thing in the Mayan, the Indias, in China, the Chinese civilization, and so on and so on. So the big question was like, why is that? Why is it not possible to make significant progress as a species? That is what advanced projects called the installation. It makes more sense in European languages than in American, because installation seems to be something very technical, but the idea is the same. Someone came in and installed something on multiple facets, multiple layers, changing genetic codes of humanity, making them collapse oftentimes. Most species do not age. is one of the first things that species rule out. They have the ability to restore the cells within their bodies. So they do age in terms of they get, they make experiences, but the cells always maintain a certain level. They reach a certain level of progress, and then they stay that way until they die. And naturally, change life. Let's call it that way. Different other aspects as well, right? If you think about institutions on this planet, right, you have certain institutions where that do not seem to support the evolution of humanity. Other species in the universe, they have ruled that out. Their systems are working for the evolution of humanity. Who made all these things? Why are there kings and queens and certain rulers, certain Nero characters? Why are these things happening? And we figured out that there was way more to that, and that there was a competitor of humanity that is now gone, but at that time was looking at the baby stage of humanity thousands of years ago and said, like, let's make sure that they don't grow into the role that the universe would like to see them grow into.
How long has ET been visiting this planet? Do you have any idea?
Ever since. Humanity is not the very first species that inhabited
not
this
at all.
planet.
Not at all. Not at all. That's a great point. But if I was going to answer my own question, I would say probably since the beginning of the planet, not of life, right? Because it's a beautiful planet, right? Covered in water, temperate, nice. We got great beaches, right? I mean, this is something that stands out. We are looking and scanning the heavens every day for new exoplanets. And if we discovered a bright blue gem like Earth, we would get pretty excited, right? And we've discovered thousands and thousands of exoplanets, and that will continue till the end of time. But to ET, Earth must have stood out since the beginning, right?
Not for everyone. I mean, opinions about the planet vary. Experiences vary.
Really.
There are some species who think that humanity is living on a junkyard. And,
well, they watch the Kardashians, so what's the big surprise there? That Kanye and the Kardashians represent this planet. That would freak somebody out there. But yeah, I suppose that's true.
I mean, it's a fascinating thing because when we got in contact with the Greys, one of the big questions you asked, what was the first question? I don't, at this moment, don't really know what the very first question was, but I know what one of the very first important question was. And one of the very first important question was like, what is their credo? And do they actually want to take over the planet? Do they want Earth? Are they going to invade Earth? Is that their plan? Tim, here's the script. Go in, figure that out. And as much as I could imagine a Grey starting to laugh, that was the most I've ever seen a Grey starting to laugh. Not that they were ever doing that or losing their composure ever. But they found that question so ridiculous that they just answered, there's so much stuff on this planet. You guys have not figured out how to control natural phenomena, weather phenomena. You still have floods. You still have, thunderstorms. You still have winds, catastrophes. We are not at all interested in your planet at all. And with that, it was very neutral as always, but that was the most moment where I thought like they're just gonna roll on the floor laughing about the question taking over the planet.
Where I'm going to circle back if I can. This is the question for me. So ET coming that you were with in the container, is that ET visiting this planet, or is that ET staying in a castle somewhere in Hungary?
That's a good question, Jimmy, and I don't know. I asked myself that. I don't know if the being was... Okay, clearly there are so-called zoos, right? They call them zoos, where they have non-human visitors living there, basically in live environments. I've seen these things. I've visited them. I was once invited to go into one of these enclosures and just, you know, be close to being behind a thick glass wall, because they have their own environment. They have their own atmospheric environment there. They have their own gas ratio in the air, whatever they breathe, and so on, and the modulation of gravity, you know, artificial gravity, and so on. But there are visitors, there used to be visitors that had their own enclosures and life environments on planet Earth. We called them, or they were called zoos, and these people were called guests, right? So if the specific gray being was visiting, or if it was, you know, putting the body into a corner and just leaving it there like a puppet would do, and then going somewhere else on an adventure in the universe, I don't know. I can't tell you that.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating. And the word zoo, tough word to use here. But this was in Europe. I'm just guessing.
Yes, but I'm not breaking any secrets that other countries have their own, and used to have their own environments. One of the things that have changed in the unseen during the times of disclosure is that all these guests have returned.
Now, Russia has guests. China must have guests, right?
Yes.
Would you like to expand on that? Are they sharing their information with us?
Oh, here's the thing. Is any institution in North America sharing their information with any other institution in North America?
Yes, no. Yes, we are. Well, but let me explain, okay? And I'm not in any way debating you, Tim, at all. But this is the way that I look at it. With all of the geopolitical bullshit that goes on every single day, and it's been going on for thousands of years, that's one thing. But when it comes to space, we have a great relationship with Russia. We share intelligence with every country when it comes to space and exploration. We have the ISS and everything else. So space scientists and astronauts have freedom of communication across borders. That's something that we've always, you know what I mean? We've left that alone. It hasn't been politicized that much, I should say. And I would hope that same information when it comes to ET and contact is also shared amongst scientists and those that are working in these projects. That's my take. I think that they need to leave politics out of it and share what they've got. That's my take.
I agree that this is a need, and humanity has to come and live up to that point 100%. And wherever there was a need to share, and wherever there was a need to collaborate and cooperate, people, you know, got their stuff together and were indeed working together. And there are initiatives to bring together certain groups on this planet that all have their own agendas and all interests, and they're representing other ideas, but there are initiatives where these people are working together. However, what my strong impression is that in the last centuries, that was not the reality at all, unfortunately. Not even inside of these groups itself were information freely distributed. Like, you could not expect that someone would just get all the information and get access to all information in the network or something. There are clear boundaries, and even agencies that are working under the officially, that have sworn the same oath for the same flag, they would not share information with one another unless they really have to. And that is something that really is changing, must change, and that we all hope that is going to change very, very quickly.
It is. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a second. If that's the case and the information isn't being shared, how do we know that ET is sharing the same information with the world and isn't picking sides or favoritism?
Oh, they are. 100%. 100%.
Really?
There are certain, 100%. There are certain ETs that are working together with certain groups only, and there are other ETs that are working with other groups only, and that makes the whole exopolitical situation and the whole collaboration very, very complex. Because among these beings, there are also certain preferences and certain disliking anti-preferences, so to speak. So it makes it very, very, very complex. There are beings that indeed try, and again, like very honorably, the U.S. naval fleet, for example, made a huge step forward trying to bring together certain groups and so on, because everyone agrees, everyone knows that collaboration is the most important thing, and humanity is, even with 7 billion people, back then even less, right? Think about that. We only had a few thousand people that actually had a knowing that we're inside of these programs, right? It's not, you don't have a recruitment website back then that says like, hey, we need some specialized personnel, we need some people for this. It was a recruitment process that in my case took at least 4 years. So imagine you're applying for a job and you have no idea about the outcome, but it also takes 4 years until you even have your first briefing for what you're doing. That's impressively deconstructive. So everyone agrees and everyone knows that a unified humanity is the most important thing. But at the same time, there are cultural preferences. It's basically the wall color, right?
Sure.
Someone would like to have the color, the walls colored in a blue tealish color, and some other would like it green, and that's what people argue about. So that is something where everyone's trying their best to come to a point of collaboration, because intentionally and intellectually we all know that we have to.
There are bad people on this planet too, as well, that will use this information to gain an advantage over other cultures on this planet and other countries. And that's the part that makes me a little bit nervous. And the other side of it is the technology side, backwards engineering of craft and what we can extrapolate out of those craft and what we can develop for ourselves. And not all of it, Tim, is for the benefit of humanity, right? For heating our homes. It's to weaponize and to use for bad intentions. That's another issue, isn't it? Did that come up in your communication with ET?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the biggest issue is if you go historically back to the 1940s, and you have Europeans and North American people, and basically in the course of a few years, they all had their hands on their first crafts, right? Talking about Roswell, we talked about that before. In Europe, it happened a little bit earlier. We're talking about at least half a century, like 5 years or something earlier. In the European field, Russia came a little later, China came even later, and then, you know, other things, other nations came in as well. But ultimately, yes, these groups try to gain as much technology and as much information for their own agendas. The thing about that is, and that is actually a very interesting and very comforting thought, the higher you go, the quicker it comes to a Mexican standoff. When you think about two people in a bar, committing to a hand fight, then it's a 50-50 chance what happens, right? Probably, you know, one of them gets damaged, the other one walks home or something with a I don't know, blue eye or something. But the higher you go, think about this: if two people play chess against each other, and I'm talking two humans, then you have an hour-long game, and it's who is the better one, who has the better strategies, who calculates better in their mind, and so on and so on. And then you have like a certain elo and so on. But even if you take one of the best chess players in the world, let's say Carlsen, right, who's known to be one of the best chess players, if that dude is playing against a chess computer, before he even made the very first move, he already knows he has lost. He already knows he has lost the game because the computer already has calculated 10,000 other steps before he has even moved the first figure. The higher you go in that universal consciousness, the quicker these competitive moments, these fighting against one another, these moments are done. They come to a complete standoff. They completely neutralize one another. So it's a very interesting and beautiful and actually very calming fact that the more the universe learns about itself, the more the universe discovers that it is itself that is mirroring itself, right? Someone else that you have a fight with is not outside of you, but is actually a representation of yourself. Universus, right? Even the Roman people use that word because it means literally the universe is looking at itself. That's the word universe. That's the meaning of the word universe. So the further ahead you go, right now, if you're thinking about a level 3 planet, something that we've left behind a few years ago, and now we're in the shifting moment into a level 4 planet. A level 3 planet is defined by beings that have their individually first. They look into the mirror, they see themselves, they know that they are something else than their neighbors. They know they are someone else than another person. That comes with a lot of challenges, right? It comes with people arguing with other people and both of them walking out of the room and thinking, oh, what a dick is that? Or, you know, I hope I can say things.
You can say whatever you want, man. Say whatever you want.
I usually don't, you know, but I'm feeling.
I don't either. But sometimes, you know, it just comes out. But I'd rather be honest with myself than edit or control thought, because now you're wearing a mask. So take the mask off, let that shit just come out. You know, I think that it projects honesty, and that's you brought up a point earlier. You brought up 2 points. Let's back up for a second.
Jimmy, let me quickly finish this one sentence because I want
sure.
to.
Okay.
Just let me say that because the planet goes through a development stage. We classified the previous version about 10 years ago. Everyone was living on a level 3 planet. And no one was, not no one, right? You were thinking about these things. Gaia people were thinking about these things. Everyone here watching probably were thinking about these things. But the majority of people were not thinking about their position in the universe. We're now approaching a level 4 level reality where beings have to do that. They have to think about these things. And the interesting thing is 95% of all life forms at a level 3 reality are very nice, are very sociable. And you can see that in your own life. You don't have to go into the Andromedas. You don't have to go into Orion or somewhere else. If you're looking at all the people you meet in your life on a level 3 reality, 95% of all people that you meet in your life will be you getting along with them. They're going to be nice people. When you go into a level 4 reality where you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I am the universe. I am the universe. I am my own universe, and everyone else is an interplay, an interaction with my own energies. So the universe is mirroring, it's interacting in a certain way. Not all your problems are going to go away. That's the thing. It's going to get you to a point where you must think about these things, because suddenly you get aware of that. You get aware that all these circumstances, they don't happen randomly. They happen because your energy is interacting with another part of energy, but both energies is the same life form. It's the same life. Suddenly, this ratio of 95% goes up to 97 point something. So suddenly you have a lot more nice beings. And now you go to a level 5 reality, where it's not only about your reality anymore, where you're thinking like, oh my gosh, I am the universe, I am infinity. What can I do with these things? What can I do with the fantastic knowledge that comes along with that? The infinity of interesting things. Now I can live for 3,000 years because someone put their consciousness into a fiber printed body. Now you're in a level 5 reality. Now you're thinking about, oh my gosh, the universe is energy. I am energy. What does that even mean? And suddenly you become aware of the energy. Your perception of the world changes. At that time, we're already talking about 99% of all beings in the universe suddenly turning and leaning towards a very harmonized state. Then you go into level 6 reality, and suddenly you have 99.9999% of everything in the universe that is harmonized. A beautiful reality. All these gurus that came to Earth and said like the underlying nature of the universe is love. That is something that we approach to refine through this process. How long that takes, that is individual.
Yeah, that is the big problem. And what I was going to say was exactly what you're saying right now, in that humans are unique on this planet. We have the ability to talk about thought with someone else. That's woof, right? The ability to story something, to orate, and to share ideas and memories and everything else. But that is very unique. And the rest of the universe is doing the exact same thing, right? They're communicating and sharing thought. Now, where do we go with this ability of ours? Do we self-destruct, or do we take steps forward? We are at a very, very interesting point with where the Earth is right now. We're at a fork in the road, aren't we, Tim? We're in a fork in the road. And now let's back up to the second point that you made, which is also about what we're talking about now. You said it took about 3 months to get acclimated to the presence of ET sitting in front of you, to get your system prepared for that. All right. Can the rest of the planet handle the shock that you're talking about? Right? Right? If it took you 3 months and this happens, something that's a shock to the system for this planet. A lot of people will say, we can handle it. We've seen enough movies about ET, not that big of a deal. I'm not so sure that would be the case. I've done 3,000 shows on this subject, right? 3,000 shows. My ass ain't ready, right? I don't know. So can the rest of the planet handle this?
Honestly, at the very moment, no. No. It depends. It depends on the ET, right? Because naturally, the advanced projects have looked into that, right? They have done research, and they figured out something. Humans react differently depending on what being stands in front of them. 7 feet tall beings, insectoids with lots of eyes and antenna, not easy to process for beings. Anything that has nice fur, much better, much easier to handle. Interestingly enough, anything that looks very similar to humans, the easiest. So, of course, this knowledge will influence the way that disclosure will roll out. So easily, the next step that I'm expecting is that we're going to talk about other human life forms in the universe. It is much easier for humanity. You gotta beside all the radiation issues, beside all the space viruses, besides all the differences that might occur, and also the psychological, emotional impact that happens. I tell you one story which I found crazy to think about. It's not only ETs. There are certain fairs, military fairs in at certain locations where people are selling advanced technology. These re-engineered crafts already exist. Humanity already knows how to fly them. They know how to operate these things. So one situation was that these people are just traders, right? From other companies, other institutions, and so on. They come to these fairs and they want to buy technology from what is being offered behind the curtain. And there was one instance where a person could not take the reality. His consciousness, his psyche could not handle the fact that this UFO craft would stand before him and go within 2 seconds into the air without any noise, anything, just standing. The merchant, the businessman who was not interested in exopolitics, it was a businessman, right? He fell down to his knees and was dead because his body was not able to integrate the shift in reality. So all these ideas about like, oh, we got to push these things, I know that in the intro you were playing the US president who was saying, how would the world come together if only, right? These are ideas that are 60, 70 years old, and they are outdated because right now we are very aware that all these things are very sensitive. The human biology, the human psyche cannot handle all interactions and all changes in their reality field. It would decompress basically what they are experiencing, and we want to avoid that. So what I'm expecting very soon is much rather a discussion about, oh, there are other humans out there. Apparently humanity is not alone. And then suddenly we reveal that there are other humans on other planets, which we do have contact to these other humans. They are relatives of humanity, and they might come in and they might share information with people.
So when you say humans, I'm assuming they could walk down the street and just move into society and we wouldn't know the difference.
Yes. A normal person would not at all. There's something in the human brain which is interesting, that they react to normalized patterns. So a very interesting experiment, you probably have seen that. It's the classic experiment where someone is passing a basketball inside of a group of 10 people, and then there's just a human inside of a bear costume is just walking through the group. And the experiment, the human who is ordered to just look at the basketball being passed, they're being asked at the end of the experiment and said like, hey, did you see the bear? And they say like, what bear? There was no bear. They completely fade out, the human brain fades out anything that doesn't fit into regular known pattern. It's just a biological thing that the neurological, the aspect of the brain is still doing. So the same thing happens with non-human intelligences. In the very moment when they look very human, humans will say, oh yeah, that's a human. And then they feel A normalization.
I mean, why, if somebody wants to argue that point with me about humans or what ET would look like, or is there a possibility of ET looking like us? I don't know. I almost tune out, because that is coming from someone that hasn't looked at the science and what we have learned. And I'm speaking specifically of meteorites that are, and asteroids that are just random in our own solar system, right? That have RNA and DNA on them. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you look at proteins are so complex, it's very hard for us to map out a protein here, even with AI. It's very, very difficult. Proteins are complex. Amino acids are complex. And to have those fundamental building blocks of DNA on just floating around, well, that says to me, an RNA, which is the instruction set for DNA, on Bennu or whatever asteroid you want to point at, then that indicates to me that DNA and RNA is universal. It's everywhere. So why would we jump to this conclusion? Now, sure, there's alien life that is freaky. Of course, we have freaky stuff on this planet. But ET looking just like us makes a lot of sense. Stereo hearing, stereo vision, stereo nostrils, right? 10 digits, upright walking. We're a very efficient system. So why wouldn't that be replicated throughout the universe? And I would say it is, to the infinite, Tim. It must be everywhere. Us must be everywhere.
Yes, depends on what you define as us, but yes, I 100% agree. In the year 1954, if you were talking to someone from let's say U.S. agency or something, they would tell you that, if they could, but they would tell you that there were, say, 7 species. They would say, my gosh, we have figured out that there are 7 species and we've been in contact with them in the 1950s. During my time, we figured out that there's so much life in the universe that we don't even have the capacities to even analyze or look into a fraction of it. So we hold records of over 10,000 species, but only because those are the very, very top few 0.0 something percent that humanity is interested in. And no one has time to actually analyze the biology or biological life, the flora and fauna on all these planets in the universe. No one has time to
It's got to be a mind-boggling huge number.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A number so big, we don't even understand how big of a number that is represented. And that's what it has to be. I want your take on this really quick before we wrap. One of the things that I really enjoy from critics and debunkers is the mistake that they make. Why is everybody, seeing different types of ET and different types of craft? That doesn't make any sense. That statement doesn't make any sense. You would expect that with all of the life out there, that the civilizations that are visiting this planet are varied, and their craft are varied. Their way of getting here is so varied that probably no 2 experiences are the same. And that's the way to look at it. And the people that criticize this subject don't even understand the words coming out of their mouth.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, true. There are about 12 underlying physical principles how you can make a UFO fly. only 12. That's the underlying physics that you need in order to build a UFO. But how you design the outer appearance, how you paint your wall, you have an infinity of possibilities, and we see that. We see that from building a flying UFO is actually not the biggest achievement in a species, to be very honest. I know we are officially not yet counting the species officially to the species that hold the technology, but we all do know humans already have the technology. The reality is lots and lots of species have the technology, just as much as lots and lots of species figure out how pressure creates a little can make a little train move or something like that. If you burn something, it creates you can do something with that. This is in the similar environment. There's only 12 principles, but all these species, how they design their their craft. We've seen tic-tacs, we've seen things that look like M&Ms, we've seen things that look like a sea star or something like that. That's completely up to the species and their preferences.
Now, one last quick question. Again, this is for me, but the ET, the grays, or whatever color you want to put on them, that you were interacting with, were they from the future? Did they know our future? Do they know the future? And are they coming back to a point in time where we exist, or do they not? Are they not from the future and they don't know our future or theirs?
How much time do we have to give you?
Take all the time. See, yeah, take all the time you need.
All the time. That's a very clever remark. I like that. Well, from their own perspective, and that's very interesting because we don't only have had contact with the Greys. We had a variety of other beings that we had contact to. Beings that meticulously took record over the history of their own history, but also even the history of planet Earth, right? They were looking into millions of years of, they had these records, right? They noted everything down. The first thing that we noticed was certain sources that were meticulously taking note of the history. Some of them just did not match. There was and the first reaction of advanced projects is like, oh, someone is lying. Someone is making up some details. Some stuff is wrong. But the reality is in the universe that beings can have different observable standpoints in the universe, and they can create their own timelines. They can create their own time. The universe does a job in infusing these things together, sometimes in a better way, sometimes in a looser way, but in certain ways, these species, highly evolved, looking into millions of years of Earth history, they had different notes, they had different records on what's happening. So with the Greys, I get that question oftentimes when people are asking, are they coming from the future? And then the next question is, are Greys, is that humanity? Is that humanity coming from the future, coming back to Earth? From the perspective of Greys, that is not partially correct, because from their perspective, they're coming from a different version of the universe. This version has collapsed because it became unstable. Two electromagnetic bubbles that were kind of overlapping, and they used technology to just jump into this version of the universe. And their thought was, and their project and the mission was, and successfully done so, they were correcting their own path, their own evolutionary timeline, some regaining some of the spirituality and some of the mystery and the awareness that they've kind of like lost in billions of years of artificial evolution. And that is one of the reasons why they came back to humans, because humanity from their standpoint can connect these different pathways. It's a very complex situation, and if you and I have a biscuit and a tea together, I can pull out some maps and explain it more.
Absolutely fascinating, Tim. Great conversation. Great to finally get you on the show. Where can everybody follow your work?
Thank you very much. There's one thing that when I came forward, Gaia had me first, and I never expected that so many people were interested in getting me on their podcast and their interviews and TV shows and so on. For me, the first thing that I just wanted to bring to humanity was everyone can do something to change their own timeline, and everyone needs and must to do something to change their own timeline. And they should not rely on the global system and things that are outside of them. They have to make their own decisions. It's free will and so on. So when I came forward, I said everyone can do that. It's the quickest exercise ever. Sit down on the bed and close your eyes. Become aware that you are the universe, that you are defining your timeline, and just say something like "all shift happily now." Back then it was Earth shift happily now, but right now it evolved to let's all shift happily now, because we all want the universe to come to the point of harmony and the point of evolution. So that's my initiative, and I would love everyone to join us there. It's www.allshifthappily.now.com. That's where they can find a lot more. If they are interested in psychic awareness, which I'm training people to, psionics, so they can move things with their mind and do telepathy and telecommunication and all that kind of stuff, it's staclass.com. staclass.com. It's a paid program, but it's very, very worth it.
Yeah, right on. I look forward to our next conversation, and just keep doing what you're doing, man. And next time when I have you on the show, we'll pick one subject and we'll do the deep dive. Today we just kind of had to do everything, Tim. You knew that. But next time, we'll laser focus in on something. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you do. And greetings to Sid Goldberg, too.
Absolutely. Sid's listening right now. He is. He's doing his job. He's the best. Thank you so much, Tim. Behave and be well.
Thank you.
Tim Tactical. What a great conversation. I was really looking forward to that. And I do want to remind everybody, tomorrow night on the show is what have I got going on tomorrow night? Really quick. Oh yeah, tomorrow night Melissa Tittle is here. She's got a new film out. It is called Illusion. So until tomorrow night, I'm your host Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go back, Lee Tappy.